I still remember the exact moment my world shattered into 1,000 pieces. It wasn't when I found the lipstick-stained collar. It wasn't even when I discovered the hotel receipts hidden in his briefcase. It was the night Marcus walked into our bedroom, looked me straight in the eye, and told me I had become boring. That after 7 years of marriage, after building his empire together from nothing, after sacrificing my own career to support his endless business trips and investor meetings, I was no longer exciting enough for Marcus Ashford, tech billionaire, and the man I had loved since college. He didn't ask for a divorce that night. He announced it, like he was presenting quarterly earnings to his board. Cold, clinical, already decided. "I'm filing papers tomorrow, Julia," he said, adjusting his Rolex without even looking at me. "You'll get what's fair. My lawyers will reach out." I sat on the edge of our bed, the same bed where we had once stayed, up all night planning our future, talking about the family we would build, the life we would create together. My hands were shaking. "Marcus, please. Can we just talk about this? I know things have been hard with you traveling so much, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can—" "There's nothing to fix," he interrupted, his voice flat and emotionless. "I've already moved on, Julia. I need you to do the same." Moved on. The words hung in the air like smoke. "What do you mean, moved on?" He sighed, like I was inconveniencing him with basic questions about the end of our marriage. "Her name is Vanessa. She works in acquisitions. We've been together for 8 months. 8 months. I felt the air leave my lungs. 8 months, while I had been planning our anniversary trip. 8 months, while I had been attending his company galas, smiling for photos, playing the perfect supportive wife. 8 months, while I had been trying to get pregnant because he said he wanted to start a family. "You've been cheating on me for 8 months?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. "I don't see it as cheating," Marcus said, and I watched him check his phone, already distracted. "I see it as recognizing when something isn't working anymore, and having the courage to pursue happiness. Vanessa understands my world. She's ambitious, driven. She doesn't sit at home, waiting for me to come back and validate her existence." The cruelty of those words hit me like a physical blow. I had given up my position as a marketing director at a Fortune 500 company when his startup began demanding 18-hour days. I had believed in him when investors laughed at his pitch. I had maxed out my credit cards to keep his business afloat during the first brutal year. And now he was calling me someone who sat at home waiting to be validated. "I gave up everything for you," I said, tears streaming down my face. "My career, my savings, my time. I believed in you when no one else did." "And I'm grateful for that," Marcus said, in the same tone someone might thank a waitress for bringing water. "Which is why I'm going to be fair in the settlement. You'll get the condo downtown and a reasonable amount. But the company, the houses, the real assets, those stay with me. I built this empire." "We built it," I said, standing up now, anger finally cutting through the shock. "I was there, Marcus. Every single step. Every pitch meeting, every investor call, every crisis at 3 a.m. I built this with you." He smiled then. Not a warm smile. A patient, condescending smile that made me feel small. "You supported me, Julia. There's a difference. You made coffee and answered emails. I made the decisions that turned a failing startup into a $3 billion company? My vision, my risk, my reward. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but instead, I just stared at this stranger, wearing my husband's face. When did you become this person? I didn't become anyone, Marcus said, walking toward the door. I just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. I'll have my assistant send over the details. I'm staying at the Peninsula until this is handled. Please, don't make this difficult. He left. Just walked out of our bedroom, out of our marriage, out of the life we had built, like he was leaving a business meeting that had run too long. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, replaying every moment of our relationship, looking for the signs I had missed. They were all there, of course. The late nights that became later. The business trips that extended without explanation. The way he had stopped asking about my day, my dreams, my feelings. The way I had slowly disappeared from his life even while standing right in front of him. The divorce moved forward like a machine. Efficient, brutal, impersonal. Marcus's lawyers were exactly what you'd expect from a billionaire's legal team. Expensive suits, leather briefcases, and the kind of calculated aggression that comes from winning every battle before it starts. The lead attorney was a woman named Patricia Vance, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, who spoke about dismantling my life like she was discussing stock options. Our first mediation session happened 3 weeks after Marcus walked out. I sat across from him in a conference room that probably cost more per hour than most people's monthly rent. He looked good, rested, happy, like leaving our marriage had been the best decision he'd ever made. Vanessa was with him. She sat beside him with her hand on his arm, young and polished, and beautiful in the way that comes from expensive salons and personal trainers. She couldn't have been more than 26. She smiled at me. Actually smiled. Like we were all friends meeting for brunch instead of adversaries dividing up the pieces of a broken life. Thank you for being reasonable about this, Julia, Marcus said, as Patricia slid a folder across the table. I think you'll find the offer more than fair. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. The downtown condo, which was the smallest property we owned, $250,000 in cash, and absolutely nothing else. No stake in the Ashford Technologies, the company I had helped build from nothing. No share of the investment properties. No portion of the stock portfolio. Nothing. This is insulting, I said quietly. Patricia leaned forward, her voice smooth and practiced. Mrs. Ashford, I think you'll find that under California law, the offer is quite generous. You were married for 7 years, but you haven't been employed during most of that time. You have no children together. The prenuptial agreement you signed clearly states, I never signed a prenuptial agreement, I interrupted. Marcus exchanged a glance with Patricia. Something passed between them, something rehearsed. You signed one before the wedding, Marcus said calmly. Perhaps you don't remember. It was a busy time. But the document is legally binding, and it specifies exactly this kind of settlement in the event of divorce. I felt cold all over. I would remember signing something like that, Marcus. I never signed a prenup. You know I didn't. We talked about it, and you said you didn't believe in them. You said you trusted me completely. People remember things differently under stress, Patricia said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. But I assure you, Mrs. Ashford, the document exists. It bears your signature, and it was properly notarized. If you'd like to contest it, you're certainly welcome to do so. But I should warn you that litigation against someone with Mr. Ashford's resources is expensive and rarely successful. The wisest course of action is to accept this generous offer and move forward with your life." I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, searching for any trace of the man I had married. The man who had proposed to me on a beach in Mexico, crying because he said he couldn't believe someone as amazing as me had chosen him. The man who had held me through my mother's funeral, whispering that we would get through it together. The man who had promised me forever. That man was gone, if he had ever existed at all. "I need time to think," I said. "Take all the time you need," Marcus said, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket. "But the offer expires in 30 days. After that, things get significantly less generous." He left with Vanessa on his arm. She looked back at me once, and the pity in her eyes was worse than any insult could have been. I hired a lawyer with the last of my savings. His name was David Chen, and he operated out of a small office in Pasadena that smelled like old coffee and desperation. He was kind, which somehow made everything worse. "Julia, I'm going to be honest with you," he said after reviewing my case for 2 days. "This is bad. The prenup looks legitimate. The notarization checks out. And fighting Marcus Ashford in court with the resources you have available is like bringing a plastic knife to a gunfight. He will bury you in motions and depositions and legal fees until you have nothing left." "So I just give up?" I asked. "I just let him erase 7 years like they meant nothing?" David looked at me with sad, tired eyes. "I'm not saying give up. I'm saying be smart. Take the settlement. It's not fair, but it's something. Use it to start over. Build a new life. Because if you fight this and lose, you could end up with even less." I left his office feeling like I was drowning, like the universe itself had turned against me. The 30 days crawled by like months. I stayed in our mansion because I had nowhere else to go, wandering through rooms that felt like museums of a dead marriage. Marcus didn't come back. He sent movers for his things, professional and efficient. And I watched strangers box up pieces of our life together like they were packing up inventory. I signed the papers on day 29, not because I accepted it, but because I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. I moved into the downtown condo with 2 suitcases and a heart that felt like shattered glass. That's when I discovered I was pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the positive pregnancy test, and I couldn't even cry anymore. I had no tears left, just a strange, hollow feeling where my future used to be. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. I called again and again. On the 5th try, Vanessa answered his phone. "Julia, you really need to stop calling," she said, sounding more annoyed than angry. "Marcus has moved on. You should too." "I need to talk to him," I said, my voice shaking. "It's important. Please." I heard muffled conversation in the background, then Marcus's voice, cold and clipped. "What is it, Julia?" "I'm pregnant." Silence, long and heavy. Then, "That's impossible." "I'm 8 weeks pregnant, Marcus. The timing, we haven't slept together in 4 months," he interrupted. "So either you're lying or it's someone else's. Either way, it's not my problem." "Marcus, please. I haven't been with anyone else. You know that. The baby is yours. We can do a paternity test if you want, but I don't want anything," he said, and his voice was so cold it made me shiver. And if you try to come after me for child support or make any claims about this supposed pregnancy, my lawyers will destroy you. Are we clear?" The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, feeling like I had fallen into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, had just denied our child before it was even born. The pregnancy was difficult, not just physically, though the morning sickness lasted all day and left me weak and dehydrated. But emotionally, mentally, it felt like carrying the weight of every failure, every mistake, every moment I had ignored my instincts and trusted someone who was destroying me. I couldn't afford my old life. The condo was in a nice area, but even with the divorce settlement, money disappeared faster than I expected. I got a job doing freelance marketing work from home, taking contracts whenever I could find them, working until my back ached and my eyes burned. I was alone, completely alone. My parents were gone. I had lost touch with most of my friends during the marriage, too busy supporting Marcus's endless ambitions. The few people I reached out to offered sympathy, but kept their distance, like divorce and single motherhood might be contagious. 5 months into the pregnancy, I got an email from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Jonathan Pierce. We had worked together at my old company, back before I gave everything up for Marcus. He had been a junior executive then. According to his email signature, he was now CEO of Pierce Global Enterprises, one of the fastest growing investment firms in the country. The email was simple. "Julia, I heard about your divorce. I'm sorry. I always thought you were one of the most talented marketers I ever worked with. If you're looking for opportunities, I'd love to reconnect." Coffee. I stared at that email for 2 days before responding. Pride, shame, fear, they all fought inside me. But eventually, desperation won. We met at a small coffee shop in Santa Monica. I was 6 months pregnant by then, obviously showing, exhausted and probably looking like a ghost of my former self. Jonathan was the opposite. Successful, confident, put together. He stood when I walked in, smiled warmly, and didn't even glance at my pregnant belly like it was something to be embarrassed about. "Julia Chen," he said, using my maiden name. "God, it's good to see you." We talked for 3 hours. He asked about my life, but not in the way people do when they're looking for gossip. He genuinely wanted to know. I told him everything: the divorce, the betrayal, the pregnancy, the fear. And he listened without judgment, without pity, just with an understanding that made me feel human again for the first time in months. "I have a proposition," Jonathan said finally, "and I want you to hear me out before you say no." I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. "I'm listening." "I need a senior vice president of strategic marketing, someone who understands how to build brands from the ground up, who can think 5 moves ahead, who knows what it means to fight for something you believe in. The salary is $400,000 a year plus equity, full benefits, maternity leave, flexible hours after the baby comes. I think you'd be perfect for it." I felt tears burning in my eyes. "Jonathan, I haven't worked in a real capacity in years. I'm about to have a baby. I'm a mess. Why would you—" "Because I remember who you were," he said gently. "And I don't think that person disappeared just because someone tried to make you smaller. I think she's still in there. And I think she's exactly the kind of fighter my company needs." I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him I wasn't ready, wasn't capable, wasn't the person he remembered. But something deeper, something I thought Marcus had killed, whispered that maybe this was my chance to become myself again. "When would I start?" I asked. He smiled. "Whenever you're ready." I started working for Jonathan 2 weeks later. It was remote at first, easing back into the rhythm of strategy meetings and client presentations, and the complex dance of corporate marketing. It was terrifying. I had forgotten how to exist in that world, how to speak with authority, how to trust my own judgment. But slowly, day by day, I remembered. More than that, I grew. The skills I had buried for years came back sharper, more refined. The instincts I had ignored started waking up. And the confidence Marcus had spent years eroding began, slowly and painfully, to rebuild itself. Jonathan was patient and supportive without being condescending. He gave me real work, real responsibility, real challenges. He treated me like the professional I had been, not the broken, discarded wife I had become. I gave birth to Emma on a rainy Tuesday in March. She was perfect. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right through me. I held her in the hospital room, completely alone, and felt something shift in my chest. A fierceness I didn't know I had. Marcus never called, never texted, never acknowledged that his daughter existed. I took 3 months maternity leave, and during that time, something crystallized inside me. I wasn't going to let Marcus's cruelty define the rest of my life. I wasn't going to let his narrative become the truth. I was going to build something better, not for revenge, not to prove him wrong, but because Emma deserved a mother who was strong, successful, and unbroken. When I returned to work, Jonathan offered me something unexpected: a promotion to Chief Marketing Officer and a seat at the executive table. More than that, he asked if I would be interested in co-developing a new division of the company focused on brand resurrection, helping companies and individuals rebuild after catastrophic failures. "You understand what it means to lose everything and fight your way back," he said. "That's not just valuable, it's rare. And it's exactly what this company needs to differentiate itself." I accepted. Over the next year, I threw myself into work with an intensity I didn't know I possessed. I rebuilt my professional reputation. I developed strategies that turned struggling brands into market leaders. I spoke at conferences, published articles, became someone people recognized and respected in my industry. And slowly, I became whole again. Not the same person I had been before Marcus. Someone better, someone who had walked through fire and come out tempered into something stronger. Emma grew from an infant into a toddler, happy, curious, loved. I read to her every night, played with her every morning, and built a life that was smaller than my marriage had been, but infinitely richer. I didn't date, didn't even think about it. My focus was Emma, my work, and the slow, painful process of healing wounds that had gone deeper than I realized. Jonathan and I became close friends. He was there for Emma's first birthday, her first steps, her first words. He never pushed for more, never made me uncomfortable, just existed as this steady, kind presence in our lives. "You know I care about you," he said one evening when Emma was asleep and we were having dinner at my place. "Not just as an employee or a friend, but I also know you're not ready for anything more, and that's okay. I just wanted you to know that when you are ready, if you are ready, I'm here." I smiled at him. This good man who had given me back my life. Thank you, Jonathan, for everything, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. 18 months after my divorce, Pierce Global Enterprises announced a major acquisition that sent shockwaves through the industry. We were expanding into tech infrastructure, and Jonathan was flying to San Francisco twice a month for meetings with potential partners. He asked if I would join him for a dinner meeting with some West Coast investors. "It's at Solace," he said, "that new place in Soma. Supposed to be impossible to get reservations, but apparently, when you're bringing in a $50 million deal, doors open." I hesitated. I was 3 months pregnant with my second child. Another surprise that had terrified me at first, but that I had come to embrace. I was showing just slightly, and part of me wanted to hide, to stay small and invisible. But that wasn't who I was anymore. "I'll be there," I said. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. A designer dress Jonathan had insisted the company buy for me, black and elegant and perfectly tailored to accommodate my small bump. Professional, but undeniably beautiful. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I looked successful, powerful, like someone who belonged at tables where millions of dollars were discussed over wine and steak. Jonathan picked me up in his car. "You look incredible," he said, and there was something in his voice that made me blush. "It's just a dress," I said. "It's not the dress," he replied. Solace was everything its reputation promised. Soft lighting, minimalist decor, the kind of quiet elegance that whispered money rather than shouting it. The host recognized Jonathan immediately and led us to a private section in the back, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels. We were early. Jonathan ordered drinks, sparkling water for me, scotch for himself, and we reviewed talking points for the meeting. "You nervous?" he asked. "Always," I admitted. "But I'm learning that's not a bad thing." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're going to be amazing. You always are." I was about to respond when I heard a voice that made my entire body go cold. Marcus's voice. It was coming from the main dining room, just on the other side of the frosted glass. Loud, confident, laughing at something. I would recognize that laugh anywhere. It had once made me feel safe. Now it made my skin crawl. I turned slightly, trying to see through the frosted glass without being obvious. The panels were semi-transparent, creating shadowy outlines of the diners on the other side. And there he was. Marcus Ashford, my ex-husband, the man who had thrown me away like garbage, sitting at a table not 20 feet from where I sat. He wasn't alone. Vanessa was with him, draped over his arm like an expensive accessory. They were laughing, touching, performing their happiness for an audience of one restaurant full of strangers. My hands started shaking. All the strength I had built over the past 18 months suddenly felt fragile, like it might crumble if he so much as looked at me. Jonathan noticed immediately. "Julia, what's wrong?" "It's Marcus," I whispered. "He's here, right there." Jonathan's expression hardened. He turned, looking through the glass, and I saw his jaw tighten. "Do you want to leave? We can go somewhere else. I'll cancel the meeting." Part of me wanted to run, to hide, to avoid the confrontation, the memories, the pain. But a larger part of me, the part that had survived and rebuilt and refused to stay broken, said something different. "No," I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I'm not leaving. I have every right to be here, more right than he does. Jonathan studied my face, then nodded. Okay, but if you change your mind, we're gone. No questions asked. I took a deep breath and tried to focus on the meeting prep. But I could hear Marcus's voice, drifting through the restaurant like poison. He was talking about some new deal, some acquisition, bragging about his success in that way he had perfected, making it sound casual while ensuring everyone knew exactly how important he was. Our investors arrived 10 minutes later. Two men in their 50s, both titans in their own right, both interested in what Pierce Global could offer them. The conversation flowed easily. Jonathan was brilliant at these meetings, charming and sharp and honest in a way that made people trust him immediately. And I held my own. I presented our marketing strategies, explained our brand positioning, answered complex questions about market penetration and consumer psychology. I was good at this. I had forgotten, during my marriage, just how good I was. One of the investors, a man named Richard Hartley, leaned back in his chair and smiled. I have to say, Jonathan, when you told me you had the best CMO in the business, I thought you were exaggerating. But Julia here just turned what I thought was a weakness in your proposal into your strongest selling point. That's talent. Julia has that effect on most things, Jonathan said, and there was pride in his voice. She has a gift for seeing value where others see obstacles. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Validation, recognition. Not from a husband who took credit for my work, but from people who understood exactly what I had contributed. We were deep into dessert negotiations when it happened. Marcus walked past our section. I don't know if he was heading to the bathroom, or leaving, or just wandering the restaurant like he owned it. But he walked right past the frosted glass panel separating our sections, and he saw me. I watched it happen in slow motion. His gaze swept over our table, casual and disinterested at first. Then it landed on me, on my face, on my dress, on my hand, resting on the table near Jonathan's. He froze, completely froze, like someone had pressed pause on reality. His face went through an extraordinary range of emotions in the span of about 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, confusion, and then something else, something that looked almost like fear. I met his eyes, didn't look away, didn't flinch, just looked at him with the calm confidence of someone who had survived him and come out better. He looked away first, turned abruptly, and walked back toward his table, moving stiffly, like his body wasn't quite obeying his commands. Was that him? Jonathan asked quietly. Yes. Are you okay? I took a sip of water and realized with some surprise that I was. Yeah, I actually am. But Marcus wasn't done. 5 minutes later, he was back. This time, he didn't just walk past. He stopped directly outside our section, staring through the frosted glass like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Vanessa appeared beside him, tugging on his arm. Marcus, what are you looking at? Come back to the table. He ignored her. He was staring at me with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Jonathan noticed. Do you want me to handle this? Before I could answer, Marcus did something I didn't expect. He walked into our section, just pushed aside the glass panel and walked in like he had been invited. The conversation at our table stopped. Richard and the other investor looked up, confused and slightly annoyed at the interruption. Julia? Marcus said, and his voice sounded strange, uncertain. Is that really you? I set down my fork carefully. "Hello, Marcus." He stood there, looking between me and Jonathan and the investors, clearly trying to process what he was seeing. "What are you doing here?" It was such an absurd question. Like I needed his permission to exist in public spaces. But I answered calmly, professionally, like he was a stranger who had asked me for directions. "Having a business dinner." "You?" He didn't answer. He was staring at my dress, my hair, the way I carried myself, like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then his gaze dropped to my stomach, to the barely visible bump. His face went pale. "You're pregnant," he said, and it wasn't a question. "Yes. Is it, He stopped himself, but the question hung in the air. "None of your business," I said softly. "You made that very clear 18 months ago." Jonathan stood up, positioning himself slightly between Marcus and me. "I think you should return to your table. This is a private business meeting." Marcus finally looked at Jonathan. Really looked at him, taking in the expensive suit, the confidence, the protective way he was standing near me. Understanding dawned on Marcus's face, and with it came something ugly. "This is him?" Marcus said, looking at me now. "This is who you're with?" "Mr. Ashford," Richard interrupted, his voice cold and authoritative. "I don't know who you are or what your relationship is with Miss Chen, but you're interrupting an important business discussion. Please leave." The use of my maiden name hit Marcus visibly. Another reminder that I wasn't his anymore, that I had moved beyond him. "Julia, we need to talk," Marcus said, ignoring everyone else at the table. "No," I said simply. "We don't. If that baby is mine—" "It's not," I said, and watched his face crumble slightly. "Emma is your daughter. You chose not to be her father. This baby has nothing to do with you." "Emma," he repeated, and something flickered in his eyes. "You named her Emma? That was going to be—" "It was going to be our daughter's name," I finished. "Yes, I remember. But you wanted nothing to do with her, so I made the choice alone." Vanessa appeared in the doorway, looking annoyed and embarrassed. "Marcus, people are staring. Come back to the table. Now." He looked at her, then back at me, and I saw him trying to reconcile the two versions of me. The broken, desperate woman he had divorced, and the successful, confident professional sitting in front of him now. "Julia, I think we should—" "Should what, Marcus?" I said, and now there was edge in my voice. "Should talk? Should reconsider? Should pretend the last 18 months didn't happen? You made your choices. You walked away from me when I needed you most. You denied your own daughter before she was even born. And now you want to talk because you see me doing well? Because I'm not broken anymore? That's not how this works." "I didn't know you were actually pregnant," he said, and his voice had shifted, become defensive. "You could have been lying. You could have..." "Could have what?" I said. "Trapped you? Manipulated you? Do you even hear yourself? I was your wife, Marcus. I loved you. I supported you. I built your company with you. And you threw me away and accused me of lying when I told you I was carrying your child. Don't stand here now and pretend you're the victim." The entire restaurant had gone quiet. People were definitely staring now. Even Vanessa looked uncomfortable, like she was finally seeing a side of Marcus she had been able to ignore. Jonathan stepped forward. "This conversation is over. Julia asked you to leave. I'm asking you to leave. Don't make this into a scene." Marcus looked at Jonathan like he wanted to say something cutting, something that would re-establish his dominance. But he couldn't find the words, because there was nothing to say. No angle to work, no way to spin this into a situation he controlled. He turned and walked away, his shoulders rigid with suppressed emotion. Vanessa lingered for a moment, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then she hurried after Marcus, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. The silence at our table was heavy. Richard cleared his throat. "Well, that was certainly dramatic." "Old friend?" "Ex-husband," I said quietly. "Ah!" Richard exchanged a glance with the other investor. "The famous Marcus Ashford, I presume? I've heard stories. None of them flattering." "You know him?" I asked. "Know of him," Richard corrected. "He's made some enemies in this industry. Brilliant businessman, no question, but ruthless. The kind of man who burns bridges and doesn't look back. I've always made it a policy not to work with people like that. Too much risk they'll turn on you when it's convenient." Jonathan sat back down. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, checking in with myself, expecting to find devastation, or anger, or humiliation. Instead, I found something unexpected: satisfaction, strength, a quiet knowledge that I had faced the man who had destroyed me and hadn't crumbled. "I'm okay," I said. "Actually, I'm better than okay." We finished the meeting, closed the deal. Richard and his partner signed preliminary agreements right there at the table. Impressed enough with Pierce Global's vision and my strategies that they wanted to move forward immediately. When they left, Jonathan and I sat alone at the table, the restaurant slowly emptying around us. "That must have been hard," Jonathan said gently. "It was," I admitted, "but also liberating." He looked at me, and I realized he has no power over me anymore. He's just a man I used to know, a man who made terrible choices. But he's not my future. He's barely even my past anymore. Jonathan smiled. "You're incredible. You know that?" "I'm working on believing it," I said. We left the restaurant and walked to his car. The San Francisco night was cool and foggy, wrapping around us like a blanket. I felt exhausted, but also exhilarated, like I had climbed a mountain and could finally see the view from the top. "Julia," Jonathan said as we reached his car, "I need to tell you something." I turned to him. "Okay." "I'm in love with you," he said simply. "I have been for a while now. I know the timing might not be right. I know you've been through hell, and you're rebuilding your life. But I can't keep pretending I only care about you as a friend or a colleague. I love you. I love Emma. I love who you are and who you're becoming. And if you need time, I'll wait. If you don't feel the same way, I'll accept that. But I needed you to know." I stood there, looking at this man who had seen me at my absolute worst and had given me back my strength. This man who had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. This man who had never asked for anything in return. "I'm pregnant with your baby," I said softly. His eyes widened. "What?" "The baby," I said, gesturing to my small bump. "It's yours, Jonathan." From that night 3 months ago when we both had too much wine and stopped pretending we were just friends, I wanted to tell you. I've been trying to find the right time, but there's never a right time for these conversations. He stared at me, processing. "You're pregnant? With my baby?" "Yes." "And you didn't tell me for 3 months?" "I was scared," I admitted. "I was scared you would feel obligated. Scared you would think I was trying to trap you. Scared I was making the same mistakes I made with Marcus. Scared of everything. "Julia," he said, and he took my hands in his. "I'm not Marcus. I would never make you feel obligated or trapped or scared. This is God. This is the best news you could have possibly told me. We're having a baby. Together." "Are you sure?" I asked. "Because this is complicated, Jonathan. I have Emma. I have trauma and baggage and trust issues. I'm a mess in a lot of ways." "You're not a mess," he said firmly. "You're a survivor. You're strong and talented and brave. And I don't just love you despite your complications. I love you because of everything you are, including the things you think are weaknesses." I felt tears running down my face. Happy tears this time. "I love you too. I think I have for a while. I was just too afraid to admit it." He kissed me then, right there on the street in San Francisco. And it felt like coming home to a place I didn't know existed. Over the next 6 months, my life transformed in ways I never imagined possible. Jonathan and I moved in together, creating a home that felt safe and warm and full of laughter. Emma adored him, calling him Papa John and following him around like a shadow. Work continued to thrive. The tech infrastructure deal closed, bringing Pierce Global Enterprises into a new tier of corporate players. I was offered speaking engagements at major conferences, featured in business publications, recognized as one of the industry's rising stars. And I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy, in a way I had forgotten was possible. I gave birth to our son, Michael, on a sunny day in October. Jonathan was there, holding my hand, crying when our son entered the world. Emma met her baby brother with wide-eyed wonder, gently touching his tiny fingers and declaring him her baby. Marcus never reached out. Not once. Not for Emma's second birthday. Not when our engagement announcement appeared in the business section of the Times. Not when Michael was born. He had erased us from his life as completely as he had erased me from our marriage. I was okay with that. Better than okay. He had given me an unexpected gift, the chance to rebuild my life from scratch, to become someone stronger than I had been before. But 18 months after that night at Solace, the universe decided our story with Marcus wasn't quite finished. It started with a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Ms. Chen, this is Patricia Vance. We met during your divorce proceedings." I felt my stomach drop. Marcus's lawyer. "I remember. What do you want?" "I need to speak with you about a matter of some urgency. Would you be willing to meet? I promise this isn't adversarial. Actually, it's quite the opposite." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at her office 3 days later. Patricia looked older than I remembered, more tired. She gestured for me to sit, and I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "Ms. Chen, I'm going to be direct with you because I don't have time to be anything else. I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 3 months. Maybe 4, if I'm lucky." I didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry." She waved off my sympathy. "I'm not telling you for pity. I'm telling you because it's given me a certain clarity about my life choices. And there's something I did during your divorce that has haunted me every day since." My heart started racing. "What?" "The prenuptial agreement you supposedly signed, the one that formed the basis of your settlement. It was forged." The room seemed to tilt. "What? You were right. You never signed a prenup. Marcus commissioned one 3 years into your marriage when his company started becoming valuable. He had a colleague forge your signature, backdate the document, and create a false notarization. I knew it was fraudulent. I helped him do it. I couldn't breathe. Why? Why would you help him commit fraud? Because he paid me $250,000, Patricia said bluntly. Because I was ambitious and greedy, and I told myself that wealthy people bend the rules all the time. That it wasn't really illegal because you would have probably signed a prenup anyway if he had asked. I justified it 100 different ways. But the truth is simple. I helped a wealthy man cheat his wife out of what was rightfully hers because it benefited me. I could have fought harder, I whispered. I could have. You couldn't have done anything, Patricia interrupted. We had resources you couldn't match. Even if you had suspected the fraud, you couldn't have proven it without access to forensic document analysts and investigators and lawyers who cost more per hour than you made in a month. The system was designed to let Marcus win. Why are you telling me this now? Patricia pulled out a thick folder from her desk. Because I'm dying, and I don't want to meet whatever comes next with this on my conscience. This folder contains every piece of evidence you need to reopen your divorce settlement. The original unsigned prenup. Expert analysis showing the forgery. Email communications between Marcus and me discussing the fraud. Bank records showing his payment. Everything. I stared at the folder like it was a bomb. What do I do with this? You file a motion to vacate the divorce settlement on the basis of fraud. You sue for what you should have received in the first place. California is a community property state, Miss Chen. You were entitled to half of everything Marcus built during your marriage. Half of Ashford Technologies. Half of the properties. Half of the investment portfolio. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. The number was so large it didn't even feel real. He'll fight this. Of course he will. But this time, you have the truth, and you have resources. I know Jonathan Pierce is now your fiancé. I know you're a successful executive in your own right. You're not the desperate, broke woman I faced across a conference table 2 years ago. You can win this. I took the folder with trembling hands. Why are you really doing this? Just conscience? Patricia smiled sadly. Partly, but also because Marcus called me last week. He's getting married to Vanessa next month. He wanted me to draw up a prenuptial agreement for her. A real one this time. And as I was working on it, I thought about you. About how he destroyed your life with my help. And I realized I didn't want to be part of his story anymore. I want, just once before I die, to be on the right side of something. I left her office and sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at the folder. Then I called Jonathan. I need a lawyer, I said. The best divorce litigator in California. Money is no object. What happened? I told him everything. Every word Patricia had said. When I finished, there was a long silence. We're going to destroy him, Jonathan said quietly. Not out of revenge, but because he stole from you, because he committed fraud, because he deserves to face consequences for his actions. We hired Sandra Morrison, a legendary family law attorney who had never lost a fraud case. She reviewed Patricia's evidence and smiled the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood. This is one of the cleanest fraud cases I have ever seen, Sandra said. He's going down. The only question is how hard. We filed the motion on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, every business publication in California was running the story. Tech billionaire Marcus Ashford accused of forging prenup to cheat ex-wife. The media loved it. Powerful man commits fraud against loyal wife. It had every element of a perfect scandal. Marcus responded exactly how I expected. Denials, accusations that I was lying, suggestions that Patricia was senile and making things up. His lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to get the case dismissed, trying to suppress the evidence, trying every legal trick they knew. But Sandra was better. She was methodical, precise, and completely ruthless. She took every attempt to dismiss and turned it into another news story about Marcus trying to hide the truth. The case went to trial 8 months later. Judge Catherine Winters presiding. She was known for being no-nonsense, intolerant of legal games, and absolutely committed to following evidence wherever it led. The courtroom was packed. Media in the gallery. Business journalists taking notes. Even some of Marcus's former colleagues there to watch him finally face consequences. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Sandra and Jonathan beside me. Emma was with a babysitter. Michael was 6 months old, sleeping peacefully in Jonathan's arms during breaks. Across the aisle, Marcus sat with his legal team. Vanessa wasn't there. According to reports, she had postponed the wedding indefinitely after the fraud allegations broke. Apparently, being engaged to a man accused of massive financial fraud wasn't the fairy tale she had imagined. Marcus looked different, thinner, harder, like the weight of his lies was finally catching up with him. Sandra's opening statement was devastating. Your Honor, this case is about a simple truth. Marcus Ashford built a company during his marriage. Under California law, his wife was entitled to half. He didn't want to give her half. So he committed fraud, forged a prenuptial agreement, paid his lawyer $250,000 to help him cheat. And then he used the legal system itself as a weapon to force his wife into accepting a settlement that represented less than 1% of what she was owed. This isn't a complex case. It's theft, and the evidence will show, beyond any doubt, that Marcus Ashford is a thief. Marcus's lawyer, a man named Gerald Foster, who specialized in defending wealthy people accused of terrible things, gave a passionate speech about how document analysis isn't perfect, how Patricia was unreliable, how I was a bitter ex-wife trying to get rich off my former husband's success. Then the evidence began. Sandra called Patricia Vance as the first witness. She walked into the courtroom, looking frail, clearly sick, but with an iron determination in her eyes. Ms. Vance, Sandra began, did you help Marcus Ashford forge a prenuptial agreement to use in his divorce from Julia Chen? Yes, Patricia said, and the courtroom erupted. Judge Winters banged her gavel. Order! Ms. Vance, please continue. Patricia described everything. The meeting where Marcus asked her to create a backdated prenup. The forger he brought in to replicate my signature. The false notarization. The payment he made to her personal account. She held nothing back. Gerald Foster tried to tear her apart on cross-examination. Ms. Vance, isn't it true you're dying of cancer? That you're on significant medication that affects your memory and judgment? I'm dying, Patricia agreed, which is why I have no reason to lie. My reputation is already destroyed by what I did. I gain nothing by being here except the chance to tell the truth before I'm gone. You could be lying to get back at Mr. Ashford for some perceived slight. I brought documentation, Patricia interrupted. Bank records, emails, the original unsigned prenup, expert analysis. I didn't bring feelings or accusations. I brought proof. Sandra then called the forensic document analyst who had examined the prenup. He testified that the signature was clearly forged, showing microscopic differences in pen pressure and angle that were inconsistent with how I naturally sign documents. She called the forensic accountant, who detailed exactly what I should have received in the divorce. Half of Ashford Technologies' stock, worth approximately $400 million at the time of divorce. Half of the real estate portfolio. Half of everything. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every day brought new revelations about Marcus's fraud, his cruelty, his absolute willingness to destroy me rather than share what we had built together. Marcus took the stand in his own defense. It was a calculated risk and a massive mistake. Sandra approached him like a predator. "Mr. Ashford, did you love your wife?" "Yes, once." "But you fell out of love?" "Yes." "And when you fell out of love, did you think you should still have to split your assets with her?" "I built the company, my vision, my work." "But she supported you?" "Gave up her career, invested her own money and time. She played a support role, important, but not essential." Sandra smiled. "Not essential? Yet you're asking this court to believe that you spent thousands of dollars and committed fraud because dividing assets with someone who was not essential felt unfair? I didn't commit fraud. Mr. Ashford, we have your lawyer's testimony. We have documents. We have financial records. Are you saying all of that evidence is fabricated? Patricia is dying and not in her right mind. The documents can be explained, then explain this. Sandra pulled out an email, projected it on the screen. It was from Marcus to Patricia, dated 3 years into our marriage. Need the prenup done by end of month. Can't risk giving her half if this doesn't work out. She'd take everything I've built. Marcus went pale. I don't remember writing that. It came from your personal email account. It has your signature. Are you saying someone hacked your email 4 years ago and planted evidence? He had no answer. The jury watched him squirm, and I saw the moment they stopped believing him. The defense tried to paint me as a gold digger, as someone who had planned this from the start. But it fell flat when Jonathan testified. Mr. Pierce, Gerald Foster said, isn't it convenient that you swooped in to rescue Ms. Chen? That you're now engaged to a woman who stands to become hundreds of millions of dollars richer if she wins this case? I gave Julia a job because she was talented, Jonathan said calmly. I fell in love with her because she's an incredible person. And if she wins this case, it's because she deserves justice, not because she manipulated anyone. The only person who manipulated this situation was Marcus Ashford. You stand to benefit significantly if she wins. I stand to benefit from marrying a woman I love and admire, Jonathan interrupted. Whether she has $1 million or $1 billion doesn't change how I feel about her. Can Marcus say the same about Vanessa? Can he honestly claim his relationships are based on anything more than convenience and appearance? The trial ended on a Friday afternoon. Closing arguments were powerful on both sides, but I think everyone knew what the outcome would be. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the 4 women stood and read the verdict. In the matter of Chen Vusser Ashford, we find for the plaintiff on all counts. We find that Marcus Ashford did knowingly and intentionally commit fraud in the dissolution of his marriage to Julia Chen. We find that the prenuptial agreement presented during divorce proceedings was forged and therefore invalid. We find that Julia Chen is entitled to 50% of all marital assets as defined under California community property law. The courtroom exploded with noise. Reporters rushed out to file stories. Marcus sat frozen, his face completely blank. Judge Winters banged her gavel. Order. I will have order in this court. When the room quieted, she looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Ashford, I have presided over family law cases for 23 years. I have seen every variety of dishonesty and cruelty that people can inflict on each other during divorce. But your case stands out. You didn't just lie to your wife. You weaponized the legal system itself against her. You used your wealth and power to corrupt justice. That is unacceptable. In addition to the jury's verdict, I am ordering you to pay Ms. Chen's legal fees in full and imposing sanctions for your fraudulent conduct. You will also be referred to the state bar for investigation into any ethical violations related to this case. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Ms. Chen, I want to apologize on behalf of the legal system. You were failed by people who should have protected you. You were cheated by someone who was supposed to love you, but you persevered. You fought back. And today, justice has finally been done. I couldn't speak. Jonathan was crying beside me. Sandra was smiling the biggest smile I had ever seen. Marcus stood and walked out of the courtroom without looking at me. The media swarmed him in the hallway, but he pushed through them without comment. The financial settlement took months to sort out. Ashford Technologies stock had appreciated significantly since our divorce, which meant my 50% share was worth closer to $600 million. There were properties, investments, accounts. The entire financial empire we had built together, now rightfully split. Marcus tried to appeal. His lawyers filed motion after motion, but they were all denied. The evidence was too strong, the fraud too obvious. Vanessa left him 3 months after the verdict. She gave an interview to Vanity Fair where she said, I thought I was dating a brilliant businessman. Turns out I was dating a criminal who was good at hiding it. I don't date criminals. Marcus's business suffered. Several board members resigned. Investors pulled funding. His reputation, built so carefully over years, crumbled under the weight of his exposed lies. I didn't take pleasure in his downfall. That surprised me. I thought I would want revenge, would want to watch him suffer. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for the marriage that could have been. Sad for Emma, who would never know her biological father. Sad that someone with so much potential had chosen cruelty over kindness. Jonathan and I got married 6 months after the verdict. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Emma was the flower girl, scattering petals with serious concentration. Michael slept through most of it, peaceful in his grandmother's arms. I wore a simple white dress, nothing extravagant. Nothing designed to prove anything to anyone. Ready? Jonathan asked as we stood at the entrance to the ceremony space. More than ready, I said. The ceremony was beautiful. We wrote our own vows. I promised to build a life with him based on honesty, respect, and partnership. He promised to never let me forget how strong I was, even when I felt weak. When the officiant pronounced us married, I kissed my husband and felt something settle in my chest. Not closure, exactly, but peace. The deep, lasting peace of knowing I had fought for myself and won. We honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of pasta, wine, and sleeping late. Emma loved the gelato. Michael loved everything. Jonathan and I rediscovered what it felt like to just be happy without waiting for disaster. One evening, sitting on a balcony overlooking the Amalfi Coast, Jonathan turned to me. "Do you ever think about him? About Marcus?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not the way I used to. He's not this monster in my head anymore. He's just a man who made terrible choices. I feel sorry for him more than anything." Sorry for him? He had everything. A wife who loved him, a future that could have been beautiful. And he threw it away because he couldn't see value in anything he didn't own completely. That's sad. He'll never know what we have. This partnership, this equality, this joy. He chose control over connection. And he'll spend the rest of his life alone because of it. Jonathan took my hand. "You're remarkable. You know that?" "I'm just someone who refused to stay broken," I said. We returned home to our life. I continued working as CMO of Pierce Global. We opened a foundation dedicated to helping people rebuild after financial devastation, offering legal support and resources to those who couldn't afford to fight back against powerful opponents. Emma started kindergarten. Michael took his first steps. Our house was full of laughter and chaos, and the beautiful mess of family life. I saw Marcus one more time, about a year after the trial. I was at a business conference in New York, giving a keynote speech about resilience in the face of professional setbacks. He was in the audience. I didn't realize he was there until after the speech, when I was leaving the venue. He was waiting outside, leaning against a car, looking tired and older than he should have. "Julia," he said, "can we talk? Just for a minute." Jonathan was beside me, but he stepped back, letting me make the choice. "1 minute," I agreed. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. "You look happy." "I am. I'm sorry for everything, for the fraud, the cruelty, the way I treated you. I was wrong about all of it." "Yes, you were. Do you ever think about what could have been? If I had just been honest? If I had valued what we had?" I considered the question honestly. "Sometimes, but then I think about Emma and Michael and Jonathan and the life I have now. And I realize that what you destroyed wasn't the end of my story. It was just the end of the chapter where I was small enough to fit into your version of success." "I loved you," he said. "I know you don't believe that, but I did. Maybe you did, but you loved your money and your power more. And that's a choice you'll have to live with." He nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, you were right. I'm alone now. I have more money than I can spend, and no one to spend it with. No one who actually cares about me rather than what I can give them. You warned me this would happen. I thought you were being dramatic. I wasn't warning you, Marcus. I was telling you what you had and what you were choosing to throw away. You just couldn't hear it." "Could you ever forgive me?" he asked. I thought about that, about forgiveness and what it meant. "I don't hate you anymore, if that's what you're asking. But forgiveness isn't something I owe you. It's something I did for myself, so I could move forward without carrying your mistakes. Whether you're forgiven or not doesn't change my life anymore. It only changes yours." He looked like he wanted to say more, but I was done with this conversation. Done with giving him space in my head or my heart. "Goodbye, Marcus," I said. I walked away from him for the last time, and I didn't look back. Jonathan caught up with me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, "I really am." 6 months later, I gave a TED Talk about rebuilding after betrayal. It went viral, viewed by millions of people who recognized their own stories in mine. I received thousands of messages from people who had been betrayed, discarded, told they were worthless, and who found hope in the fact that I had survived and thrived. I didn't talk about Marcus by name in the speech. I didn't need to. The story wasn't about him anymore. It was about the choice to keep fighting when everything tells you to give up. About the strength it takes to rebuild yourself from nothing. About the truth that your value isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. The talk ended with a simple message. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become after. Emma is 7 now. She's smart and funny and kind. She knows Marcus is her biological father, but she calls Jonathan Dad because that's who he is. He's the one who reads to her every night, who shows up at her school plays, who teaches her that love isn't about ownership or control, but about showing up consistently with kindness. Michael is 3. He looks like Jonathan, but he has my stubbornness. He wants to do everything himself, refuses help even when he desperately needs it. I see myself in him and hope I can teach him that asking for help isn't weakness, but wisdom. Jonathan and I just celebrated our 3rd anniversary. Nothing fancy. Dinner at home, kids asleep upstairs, wine on the patio. We talked about the future, about growing old together, about the life we're still building day by day. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The drama? The intensity of that time?" "God, no," I laughed. "I like boring. Boring is underrated. Boring is safe and stable and exactly what I need." "We're not boring," he protested. "We're wonderfully boring," I corrected. "We have kids and careers and a mortgage. We argue about whose turn it is to do the dishes. We fall asleep watching Netflix. It's perfect." He smiled. "It really is." As for Marcus, I hear about him occasionally through business channels. Ashford Technologies never fully recovered from the scandal. He sold his majority stake last year, stepping down as CEO. He's working on some new venture, something about cryptocurrency or blockchain. I don't pay much attention. He reached out once more, about 2 years ago. An email. Short and to the point. "I see what you've built. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry I couldn't be the person who built it with you." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices. I had made mine. And those choices had led us to completely different places. I teach Emma and Michael that people will sometimes treat you like you're disposable. That the world isn't always fair. That power and money can corrupt even people you love. But I also teach them that none of that determines your worth or your future. That you always have a choice about who you become after someone tries to break you. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and Jonathan is asleep beside me, I think about the woman I was 5 years ago, sitting on a bathroom floor, holding a positive pregnancy test, feeling like her world had ended. I wish I could go back and tell her that she was stronger than she knew, that the pain wouldn't last forever, that the life waiting for her on the other side of survival was better than anything she could imagine. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward carrying our scars as proof that we survived, using our pain to help others who are walking the same dark roads we once traveled. I'm not the same person I was before Marcus. I'm not even the same person I was during the trial. I've been broken and rebuilt so many times that I barely recognize the original version of myself. And that's okay. That's more than okay. Because the person I am now is someone I'm proud to be. Strong, successful, loved, a mother, a wife, a professional, a survivor. Marcus tried to erase me from his story, tried to reduce me to a footnote, an inconvenience, an obstacle between him and complete control of the empire we built together. He failed. I'm not a footnote. I'm the author of my own story now. And this chapter, the one where I'm happy and whole and surrounded by people who actually love me, is the best one yet. If you enjoyed this story of survival, betrayal, and ultimate justice, please take a moment to like this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Marcus got what he deserved? Could you have forgiven him? If you were in Julia's position, what would you have done differently? Your stories and perspectives matter, and I read every single comment. And if you want more stories about resilience, justice, and the incredible strength people find when life tries to break them, please subscribe. There are so many more stories to tell, and I'm honored you're here to listen to them. Thank you for being part of this journey.